Welcome to my channel, Mental Awareness TT, where we talk about our personal life struggles, how to overcome those challenges, and practical steps to become the best versions of ourselves. I am your host, Simone Belford, and today's topic I will be discussing how our brain operates in terms of multitasking and compartmentalizing. To begin, I will give a brief explanation of these terms and then break down the pros and cons of each. So, let's start with multitasking. We are all too familiar with this technique, especially those who grew up doing household chores while prioritizing playtime. So by Google definition, multitasking is defined as the performance of more than one task at the same time, right? So oftentimes both men and women are prone to multitasking, as we are currently living in a society that prioritizes work productivity more than mental well-being. In addition to that, we also have the expected gender roles, in the household. So this is where most women attend to all household needs, which includes the cooking, cleaning, childcare, nurturing, just the overall nurturing for the home. And for some women, additionally to that, is working outside the home as well, right? So I can safely say that women tend to do more multitasking than men. However, men are even better than us, not exactly at multitasking, but compartmentalizing, right? So what is compartmentalizing? I'm glad you asked. By Google's definition, compartmentalizing is defined as being able to separate something into parts and not allow those parts to mix together or divide into discrete sections or categories, right? So I was a bit curious about how this works because I've only recently discovered how men compartmentalize their lives during conversations with them in general, right? And so compartmentalizing for men looks like separating their social lives from their work lives. That meaning separating their emotional turmoil at home from their work environment, doing one chore at a time or spending lengthy hours finishing that one task before moving on to the next. And there's no scientific evidence to prove why men function this way as far as I know, but it is a significant factor when trying to understand some aspects of male behavior, right? In opposition, women are more emotional because we are wired to be nurturers and to have more compassion generally. So because we often network and form close social bonds with friends or work colleagues, we may have those around us for extra support during difficult times. So for example, if I'm having a rough time at work, or if I'm having a rough time at home, but my good friend and work colleague whom I trusted already knows my situation, it may be easy for him or her to see me at work looking a bit off, and they can immediately offer me support or make my workload lighter, and however, if you haven't vetted your colleagues properly, then everything you say can and will be used against you. This is where compartmentalizing becomes a challenge for women. I believe we tend to overshare information about ourselves or disclose personal information way too quickly, at least. So depending on who we share our inner conflicts with, things could go badly. But nevertheless, there are both positive and negative outcomes attached to multitasking and compartmentalizing, which means that neither is better than the other. However, with a balance, they can both work effectively. Alright, so I did a bit of research and I looked at the pros and the cons of multitasking and compartmentalizing, and here's what I found. So in terms of multitasking, the pros are increased efficiency on routine tasks, like combining simple non-cognitive tasks. The example, answering emails while on a conference call. It saves time. The con associated with that is reduced quality and accuracy, right? The brain cannot focus on two complex tasks at once, right? It could lead to a 50% higher risk of error and decreased work productivity. So even if you're on a conference call, and you're answering an email, you might tell yourself, knock two birds out with one stone, but there might always be that one important detail that you forgot to write in the email because you're kind of trying to concentrate on the conference call, so you might be able to tend to miss certain things. So that's basically what that means. The second pros is improved adaptability and brain training, meaning regularly juggling tasks can make the brain more resilient, agile, and able to handle sudden changes, which is true, or high combination environments. Again, the con to that is lowered productivity, switching cost, constantly shifting focus, known as attention residue, can take up 23 minutes to refocus, right? So actually it kind of slows down the completion rate of the task, right? The third pros, again, is reduced boredom and procrastination, right? So switching between different tasks can keep your mind more engaged and prevent monotony, right? And helping to maintain a certain momentum, or like a to-do list, right? That actually helps me. So whenever I am doing, let's say I have an assignment to do for class, but I also have a chore, like for example washing clothes, I might start part of the assignment. In the meantime, I'm loading up the water in the washing machine, and I'm waiting while the water loaded in the washing machine, I might be back on the assignment. Then I time it, and then when I finish a little of the assignment and I realize, all right, my washing machine full, I go put the clothes put the soap powder, put the clothes to spin dry for a certain amount of time, 15 minutes on the timer, and then I go back to doing my work. So that's how I do it, and it actually helps me, right? So that is the pros of multitasking, juggling more than one stuff at the same time. It reduces boredom and procrastination, and you tend to get things probably done a bit quicker, but not always accurately. So the con to that is increased stress and mental fatigue. So frequent task switching is mentally taxing, leading to cognitive burnout and anxiety, right? Now, I may be different, but for some people, juggling two things at the same time might not necessarily be comfortable. For example, if let's say we're talking about another person. Let's say a person is cooking food on the stove and they are also doing something outside in the yard, and how dangerous it could be to leave fire unattended on a stove. Just leave the kitchen area unattended, because where things tend to happen, right, you could burn the food, for example. So if I'm exhausted or stressed, like switching in between tasks, you know what I mean, I might feel a bit off to the point where I don't want to finish completed anymore. So I might say, you know, I might tell a friend, hey, or whoever in the house living with me, you know, hey, you could watch the stove for me. Hey, you could finish throwing the water. You could throw in the rice in the pot of boiling water. You know what I mean? Like, you ask somebody to assist you, because that's when you realize you're doing too much. All right, that's exactly what that is, right? And then let's look at another pros. Another pro is steady progress. So it allows multiple projects to move forward simultaneously rather than stalling on one. However, a con again is memory impairment, right? Divided attention makes it harder to retain information, affecting learning and memory. And I personally feel this because during class, when I am juggling assignments for different courses, and I have to meet a deadline, it's almost impossible to try to take two. Let's say I have a 7-day week to complete 2 assignments, right, at the end of the week, right? I can't really take 3 days to finish assignments for one course and the other 2.5 days to finish the assignment for the next course. You know what I mean? Because it come like there's a slight chance that I might be moving a bit too slow. So what my mind tends to do is I will do a little of each every day, right? And gradually I end up finishing it both at the same time. This is actually how I used to work, do my work in the past. But as I have gotten older, this no longer works for me. So instead, I will actually take the 3 days to finish one part of one assignment for one course, and the next 2 days to finish one assignment for the other course, and still complete them on time, right? So that is it for multitasking. Let's now talk about compartmentalizing. So compartmentalizing pros. Compartmentalizing, it enhances focus and productivity. So by separating distracting personal issues, from work in the individuals, it enables you to be able to concentrate on specific tasks, which increases efficiency, right? The cons is that this could also create emotional avoidance and suppression. So habitual use can lead to ignoring or suppressing important uncomfortable emotions, which can cause deeper long-term mental health issues. So for example, if I am experiencing issues at home, but I come to my work environment and I'm separating my home environment from my work environment, which is correct, which I should do. However, if I really, really need that extra support, even at work, as much as I may not feel comfortable to disclose certain information to individuals, there is also EAP services, employee engagement services, or counseling that you could sign up for and get free counseling, talk to someone who's professionally established within the organization, because all of this is all confidential, and whatever is really, really like weighing heavy on your heart, you speak to them about it so it doesn't become bigger on the job, right? Our next pros is stress management. It serves as a valuable coping mechanism during crisis, allowing individuals to function in the moment without being overwhelmed by intense emotions. This is very important because being able to manage your emotions no matter what you go through at home and come to the environment and just not be tense, but being able to still show up professionally, that is very important, and there's no way I will take away from that. So that is our pros for compartmentalizing, right? One of the cons of that is relationship strain. So creating mental walls can cause distance in personal relationships and lead to a lack of emotional authenticity. So in other words, even though you could still appear professional on the job and have it all together, after a stressful day at home and coming to work, there's nothing wrong with my life. There are things that our colleagues tend to pick up, and especially those who we have already established trust with and are close to. And if you're, say, like you're accustomed having a genuine chats in between works, falling upon each other's life, you'll have an actual social bond. But then you shift from that mutual warmness to now pretending to be like, not cold or distant, but as though you have, it's almost like you don't want to really socialize as much because you're probably afraid that you might spill what you don't want to spill. You might be a little more withdrawn then. Your close colleague could actually pick up on that, and they might misinterpret it as, this person don't want to talk to me anymore. I don't know why have I said something to make them feel a type of way. Those are the kind of things that could happen when you create mental walls and start distancing yourself from personal relationships that you would have established, right? And it appears, like you are lacking emotional authenticity to that former colleague, right? All right, so third pros of compartmentalizing is emotional regulation, which enables people to turn off negative emotions temporarily to be present in other areas of life, such as family or work, right? I think this point kind of repetitive because I spoke about that earlier when I talked about stress management, right? So emotional regulation would be I'm going through a lot at home, but you know what, I'm not going to snap at my colleague, I'm not going to be grumpy with my colleague, I'm still going to not show up like a 100% professional, but I'm still going to be warm, friendly, genuine, helpful, right? And whatever I feel on the inside, whether it's anger issues from home, I am not going to let that emotion take over me to the point where I'm now snapping at my colleagues, right? So that's what that is, right? A cons now of compartmentalization is burnout and physical symptoms. So unresolved, suppressed emotions can resurface or cause physical issues like headaches, chronic stress, or sudden emotional breakdowns. So for example, if you're going through a lot of issues at home and you are actually not doing anything to deal with those issues at home, and you do come to work, always being professional, always showing up diligently, but there goes this one, I think they call it the straw that breaks the camel's back. So it have this one defining moment at home that really, really get you upset, right? And as we said before, you are not dealing with the issue at home, you're not getting no counseling, no social support, nothing outside of work. So when you do step into the work environment now, someone says something that might be a joke, but because you're so angry and you're going through whatever you're going through at home, you just start to shout at them and just emotionally break down, or even start crying hysterically, because maybe your supervisor yell at you or tell you something that you perceive as off, so now you're breaking down, right? That is exactly what happens when you're not dealing with yourself or getting that support outside of the work environment, or if you're at least not getting EAP, employee counseling services on the job itself, right? So holding in emotions at a certain level could lead to burnout and physical symptoms such as mental breakdowns, right? And lastly, one last pros of compartmentalizing is improved decision making, helps in isolating emotions from rational thinking, right? And allowing for more objective decisions in high stakes situation. Okay, so to me that would look like, let's say I'm working in a company and I'm let's say I hate domestic violence against women, right? And we are working on a project where this project is attending to men's mental health, right? If I feel that level of hatred already towards men, then working on a project to help men would make me feel some type of way and might cause me to make a decision to hinder the process. So I might want to say, you know what, I don't think this project is a good idea. Maybe we should just focus on women, right? That there is the problem, right? So with compartmentalizing, this is where it becomes positive to compartmentalize, because when you're able to compartmentalize, you could separate your emotions, right, from affecting your rational thinking when making important decisions anywhere or on a job, right? So for in that example, what I'm saying is, if I'm able to compartmentalize, which is deal with my emotions, separate my personal feelings, and see, okay, I hate domestic violence, but my company wants to work on a project where we are attending to men's mental health, I would say, you know, a healthy compartmentalizing attitude to me would be me saying, okay, this is a really good project to help men become better, so maybe that would lower the risk of domestic violence, rather than me saying, well, I hate domestic violence, so I don't want to do anything to help better men. You know what I mean? Let's just focus on women, right? So that's one example, right? And now a con, the last con for compartmentalizing is a fragmented sense of self, right? So constant separation of experience can result in a fragmented, inauthentic, or inconsistent sense of identity. So for example, if I belong to multiple institutions, right? Maybe I belong to a church. Let's start with, I belong to my home, I belong to my work, my job, I belong to church, I belong to a gym, you know what I mean? I might be part of a, what else am I? Part of NGO organizations, or maybe a dance class or something. And in all these different settings, I am actually trying to be somebody else, right? My personality is changing with every different environment. For example, in church, I'm the goody two-shoe girl who can't do no wrong, right? But then when I'm in the gym, I'm the hottest thing since sliced bread. So, you know what I mean? I'm overly sexualized, exploiting myself in a kind of, flaunting myself, and then let's say when I'm at work, I mean, obviously I'll have to be strictly professional, establish that persona. And then when I'm at dance class again, I might be more withdrawn, shy, reserved, you know what I mean? So all of this, adjusting my behavior to all these different environments, it kind of chips away at my authenticity, because it's like, who am I? What is my personality? What makes me Simone? You know what I mean? So being at different environments is important for us to adapt to certain behaviors. For example, when you're at a church, you would not be behaving like a mad person, or be cursing, or be doing anything that goes against church guidelines, But if you are really a churchgoer or a Christian, you would be a Christian in every single environment that you go. So if my personality, part of my main personality is my religious belief, my faith in God, I would be a Christian at church, I would be a Christian at home, I would be a Christian at the gym, right? I think I said work already. I'll be a Christian at work, I'll be a Christian everywhere I go, right? So that is that is one of the cons of compartmentalization, when we try to turn ourselves into different versions, or personalities according to our environment, right? All right, guys, so as we close, what is your technique? If you do both multitasking and compartmentalizing, I will be happy to understand this balance, and feel free to share in the comments section. And thanks again for listening. See you next time.